Can you hear us, Josh?
Yes, hey, how are you?
Great, great. So big news today, obviously, the biggest being that this is the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion on Ukraine. So how is this war impacting the Ukrainian people today?
Yeah, good evening, Devyn. So this has impacted them in a very devastating way, both economically and from a humanitarian standpoint. You just talk about the number of people that have died in Ukraine. You have 13,000 service members, 7,000 civilians, 400 of which are young children. And so obviously that takes a huge toll on Ukraine. There's been millions that have been forced to leave the country. We know that at least 250,000 refugees are here in the United States. And then the food and the energy supplies have just been completely cut off to the Ukrainians. But with that said, 365 days after this war has started, they're still standing, which you just have to tip your cap to them, for lack of better words, because what they've gone through over the past year has just been completely unjust.
Absolutely. You mentioned the supplies waning. So what can we expect commitment-wise from the U.S. moving forward?
I mean, you heard it from President Biden today, this week, this month, this year, that the United States is going to stand with Ukraine for as long as it takes. Today, the United States announced $2 billion more in aid as far as drones and rockets are concerned. That's on top of the more than $110 billion that the United States has provided in military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Now, the question is obviously what comes next, because we know that there will be another ask. President Zelensky is talking about F-16 fighter jets, long-range missiles. President Biden says as far as the jets are concerned, that Ukraine does not need them at this time. But also the United States announced new sanctions today against Russia when it comes to the Treasury Department and the State Department, as far as banks, businesses, private sector, and individuals that have been helping Russia to survive the sanctions that have already been placed on them. And so the United States is going to stay with Ukraine for as long as it takes.
You know, you say as long as it takes. Now, some Americans seem to be growing a bit weary of the security and the economic assistance that the U.S. has been providing Ukraine. So how are lawmakers reacting to some of that backlash?
Well, the Democrats are completely united with President Biden in standing behind Ukraine, and for the most part, Senate Republicans are as well. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has even said that the aid to Ukraine is not getting there fast enough. Now, the same can't be said for House Republicans. You have Texas's Mike McCall, who's on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and he is fully supportive of the effort in Ukraine. But then you have House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who has made statements like the Ukraine is not going to get a blank check from America moving forward. And then you have others in the House Republican caucus like Georgia's Marjorie Taylor Greene, Colorado's Lauren Boebert, Florida's Matt Gaetz, who not only want to cut off aid to Ukraine moving forward, but they also want an audit of what has already been given to Ukraine.
Now, with those House Republicans being so verbal with their responses and how they aren't necessarily approving moving forward, does that give us any kind of traction as to the change in the aid that we're going to see going to Ukraine?
I mean, I think that remains to be seen. The appropriations period, as far as how much money is going to be given to Ukraine moving forward in Congress, is going to take place over the next couple of months. And you know, House Republican Speaker Kevin McCarthy is going to have to do a lot of song and dance, just like he had to do in order to ultimately be elected Speaker. And you saw the drama that he had to go through just within his own caucus. And so there's going to be a ton of meetings. Mitch McConnell and Kevin McCarthy try to meet at least once a week to try to get on the same page as far as issues are concerned. And no doubt they're going to continue to talk about Ukraine and just the effort that is needed to stave off Russia from winning ultimately this war.
Now, with this being the 1-year anniversary of Russia's invasion, an unprovoked invasion at that, of Ukraine, the Ukrainian president did give a message today. So what exactly was in that message that we can take away?
Yeah, so he's talking a lot about optimism and gratitude. Optimism that he believes Ukraine ultimately will win this war. Gratitude for the United States and the other members of the G7 and the EU that have supported Ukraine over the last year. Remember, a lot of people thought that Kyiv and Ukraine would fall in just a matter of days or maybe even a couple of weeks. But here we are 365 days later, and Ukraine is still standing and, as the United States says, winning the war against Russia. Now, President Zelensky also talked about the priorities moving forward. We've already mentioned the weapons that he wants. He might not be getting F-16 fighter jets anytime soon, but he will be getting more aid from the United States in the days, the weeks, and the months to come. He also wants China to stay out of it. from the standpoint of they don't want China to arm Russia with lethal aid. There have been reports out there that China could be giving drones and ammunition to Russia at any time. He obviously doesn't want that, even as China brings up a 12-point plan for peace between Russia and Ukraine. And Ukrainians say, we're all for peace, but you have to talk to us too. You can't just talk to the Russians. And also, with that said, President Zelensky says this is not the time for negotiations because Russia is still attacking us. So if they stop, we can talk peace.
All right, Josh, thank you so much for joining us once again on East Texas Now, giving us the latest, sitting at the one-year anniversary of the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Josh, thank you again for being on. I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Have a good night.